All right, let's take another look at the blocks library. Firstly, something that I did not address in my last video is how to load blocks. So whenever you open up a particular block, say let's get this preset cooking, and we'll start with an amp and a cab. And you have a particular favorite amp or cab. For example, in this case, I'll bring up this cab here that I like. It's a V30 cab. I call it Hammer Space because that is the name of my buddy Troy's studio where we recorded the IR. And then let's say with this, I have really been enjoying this Atomica is really nice. And the new Friedman 2018 is doing it for me as well. Where did I save the 2018? I thought I saved it. Maybe I didn't. Maybe it's just looking at me in the face. There it is. Look, it's looking at me in the face. This is when you spend too much time in AX8 and you can't see anything. All right, so this is what those two sound like together. So, for example, say I wanted to tweak that out a little bit and I wanted to add a little bit more like treble. So I'll turn the treble up to 6. Sounds like this. And then say in there I wanted to, change some advanced parameters or something like that. I might want to add a little bit of output compression. I might want to change the speaker drive settings, say, and increase the speaker compression, and I might want to change the supply sag and turn that up a little bit. So basically make everything a little bit more compressed. And I mean, that sounds a little bit different now. So let's do this. We'll hit Library. We will go Save As, and I can call it, maybe I'll call it LTBE 2018 number 2. There we go. So we save it. Okay. If you want to get this block, which I will share with all of you, and you want to load it in, what you have to do is, I have it all in a Dropbox folder at the moment. So Dropbox, and then say, for example, it should be AX8 blocks. There we go. And you can see that I've organized them into different folders. The reason being, if you go into your documents, there should be something called Fractal Audio, which we're looking at right now. You can go to AX8 Edit, however you get here, and you will see this thing called Blocks. Okay, and when you save blocks in AX8 Edit, like over here, this is where they inevitably go. So they will automatically be sorted into different folders. If you don't have, for example, if you're starting new with the blocks library and you don't have any saved amp blocks, what you have to do is right-click, Library, just save any old amp block, and it will create a folder in the AX8 Edit section of your documents called amp. And then you can go in there and, for example, if you're downloading a block that's been shared, you want to drag and drop the block into this folder because AX8 Edit will read from this folder. So that's something I didn't address in the last video. I think it's really important because, everybody asks, how the hell do I import blocks? Well, this is how you do it. So, for example, download the block library, make sure you've created block before, so there's at least one block in there, and then drag and drop it into the relevant folder. Don't take a drive block and drop it into the amp block or something like that. So with that, you can see there's a bunch of different blocks in all these sort of sections. I want to show you guys some of my favorite blocks in here, and I'll share all of these. Like I said, I've got them in a Dropbox folder called Leon Todd AX8 Blocks, because that's me and they're AX8 blocks. And I'll go through just a couple of these just to show you guys what they do. So let's jump over to AX8 Edit. In this case, with the BE, I really like to pre-boost this. And when I used to run like an old school analog rig, I have this pedal called the Workhorse by Anarchy Audio. And the way the Workhorse works is it's basically a clone style circuit. And I used to use it with the drive quite low, the level all the way up, and then the tone kind of cranked. And this is what it does. So if we create a drive block, you can drag and drop this into your blocks library. It's called Workhorse. So let's have a listen to what the Workhorse sounds like when I kick it in. Let's do this. And that is quite subtle, but when you're playing it, it just makes any distorted amp feel really good. So that's my favorite drive block. I love this one. It turns basically any high gain amp. And the way that pedal kind of works to me is it just gives you more of the tone you already like. It's not a, sort of overdrive pedal that changes the tone a whole lot. It's not a clean boost that just increases gain. It sort of has this magic property of it. It just makes everything sound better to me. So that's why I like to use that there. One of my favorite little amp blocks as well, which I'll switch over to at the moment, is the Fender Twin in the new Quantum 10 firmware. I think this sounds amazing, especially, strangely enough, pairing it with this V30 cab. So this is what it sounds like. I'm on the neck pickup. And then the Y state is a Fender Tweed Deluxe. And that, together with the Workhorse, is glorious. Beautiful, spanky kind of blues sound. So that's my favorite drive block. I do have a couple of others in here. I've got the Austin Buddy Klon settings in here. I think they're his settings based around the Super Overdrive. Maybe not. And there is a pre-boost setting that I basically stole. There's a pre-boost setting, which is essentially, the same thing that I use, but it's got a modifier attached to the drive block, which I believe connects to a control switch or an external switch. So in this case, hooking it up to like a volume pedal or something like that, and it will let me control the amount of drive. And then I also have a Timmy Drive in there, which I think sounds pretty cool. The Timmy sounds like this. It's more of that kind of thick, fuzzy thing going on. It's got more of that thick, fuzzy kind of thing going on, which I'm a big fan of with Fender-style amps or classic Marshalls. So they are my drive blocks that I really like. Again, we're talking like 95% of the time I just use this Workhorse drive block. I think it sounds great. In terms of other settings, for delay, one of my favorite delay blocks is just a straight up, what have I called it? Dion lead, I think. Yeah. There's that one. That's the one I'm looking for. Sorry, guys, thinking out loud here. Haven't had a coffee just yet. And what I'm using this for, I did a video with this and someone was like, why are you using a stereo delay but not using it in stereo? You're playing in mono. Well, if you have a look at the configuration, so this is a 2290 in stereo configuration. And the reason I'm doing that is what this lets me do, which I think is really cool. It gives me a quarter note delay as my main delay line, and then the second delay is coming in at 75% of that value, which would give me a dotted eighth delay. Most people are probably really familiar with these settings because of Andy Timmons. He uses that like quarter note, dotted eighth note. He says like puts a halo around the note. The nice thing about doing it this way, you could do this with the dual delay, but with the dual delay, you have to set quarter note, you have to set eighth note, and then you have to balance out the feedback. With the stereo delay mode, if I turn the feedback on my main delay down, then the feedback on the right channel stays in the same ratio, which is really cool. It will give me an equal number of repeats because we have different delay times. So kicking this block in, I really, really like. It just sort of adds, kind of that halo around the note, which I really like. And this is great with the dirty, dirty BE sound that I had going before and a bit of the Klon style settings. Yeah, this is going to be really nice. And for me, that is basically all I do when I want to like set up a new patch. I'll pretty much take an amp, dial it in where I like it, and then immediately add this delay, and then immediately add this drive just to make it better, essentially. It's kind of like secret sauce for me. The big one that a lot of people have been asking about is the wah block settings. So let's have a look at those. There's our wah block. Now, I've got separate videos on these, but essentially, all I did to do these was, say for like the Cantrell wah, or the Bonamassa wah, or the Petrucci wah, or the Slash wah, if you go to the Dunlop website, they have the manuals available, and you can look at what the minimum and maximum frequency are on the wah. So I basically just go, hey, it's a crybaby with the frequency tweaked a little bit, and you know, they might tweak a couple of other things like the Q on the wah. In that case, you could use a different graphic EQ, and I've talked about this at length in my video, you know, emulating these wahs. But that's essentially all that's happening here. So I don't have an expression pedal connected at the moment, so what I'm going to do is just assign these to the LFO, and you can have a listen to how it sounds. So that's the Cantrell wah, the Bonamassa one, and again, the modifier settings get saved here, so I'll just set this to the LFO. Pretty straightforward. It works better with a wah pedal, but here you go. And there are a couple of other wah blocks in there that is going on. With the Petrucci wah block, what you have to do to get the most out of that one is set it up with a wah pedal and use this graphic EQ block, because the Petrucci wah is based off like a rack crybaby. So if you go to the Blocks Library, load up the Petrucci wah EQ, and these are set up to auto-engage together, which is pretty cool. So that is a really great sounding wah as well, a really deep, sweet, really vocal kind of thing. So I will either normally use like the Cantrell settings or the Petrucci settings for my own patches. One last thing, I have to give a shout out to Justin York, who makes the excellent York Audio impulses. I was playing around with a preset that he sent me, and he had these reverb settings on it, and I have just stolen them for everything that I do. Basically, all I do is play around with the mix, say like I'll normally turn it to about 8%. So it's just a bit of Recording Studio A with the time right down, and you know, it just adds a little bit of roominess to the sound overall. So this is with it off. So that's a good example of, I was looking at somebody else's preset and I really liked this part of it, so I just went right-click, library, save as, and I saved it as the thickener. So that one's pretty cool. There's so many other settings. You know, I've got my rotary settings in here that I use for a very particular patch for Ragdoll shows, which is just this, I call it back to zero rotary. When we were recording that album, I had an Eventide H9, and it just had this really nice rotary preset on it. So I use that on so much stuff, and I just copied those settings over to the AX8, and I actually like the way this sounds better now. So that's a big, thick stereo effect. That sounds, I basically use this in one song. We do a song called The World You Gave Us, and the bridge section, which I just played, has this, you know, like ginormo rotary sound on it. And when we're playing live, especially if we're playing on like a big stage and I'm using the AX8 in stereo, when I step on that, it is just like the sound of the end of the world. It's so powerful. It's one of my favorite parts of any gig we do. So that is that rotary setting there. And, you know, the other one that I really, really like, again, kind of copying something from the H9, there was this, I've called it Whiskey Flange, because it reminds me of the flanger sound from Pat Travis's Snortin' Whiskey. And that's kind of my attempt at matching the infamous ADA flanger. So that's a really nice flanger block. I'm just trying to think of some more of my favorites that I like to use. The multi-delay, that's a big one. I'm running out of CPU at the moment, so I'm just going to shunt a few blocks. If you're running these blocks on like an AX8 2, obviously you can probably throw all of them into one preset. What was I talking about? Multi-delay, yeah. And there are a bunch of blocks. I will link these. Simon Harris, who is just the king of AX8 delays, has shared a lot of his blocks on his website. So if you grab these blocks, go and flick him a PayPal donation or something, because as you can see, all of these I've pinched from him and loaded them into my AX8. I'm not going to share these, obviously, because I didn't make them, but please go to his website and grab these. There are so many amazing sounds in here, and there's a couple of sounds in here that I made myself, like this circular delay, where I just basically copied the settings from the Lexicon PCM70 that somebody had posted online. Now, this particular block, you can see from the settings, needs to be connected in parallel. So connect that in a parallel row, and you get the big old Lexicon circular delays. And it's just amazing to think that, you know, a PCM70 secondhand still is going to run you over $1,000, and we can just use one block in the AX8 and completely cop that sound. A couple of other things in the multi-delay. Simon Harris also has his own circular delay settings, which are really, really good too. And I'd recommend checking those ones out, like I said before. And he's got all these like slow panning delays and things like that. One of my favorite things, though, is this whole tone fantasy. Because it does this. Crazy stuff. So again, check out Simon Harris. Here's some great videos on the AX8 as well. And that is a pretty comprehensive roundup of sort of my blocks library. I can't think of... Oh, wait, there's one more. I recently did a video. I'll go over to a clean app where I was emulating the Boss CE1. Where's my clean sound? I might use it with this Mark IV clean, because this is very pristine sounding. So if we use the Boss CE2, and essentially what I did was I lowered the... Which one was it? It's this one here, LT-CE1 match. This sounds really, really close to my actual CE1. So it's not my CE1, it's actually my buddy's. But if you use it in mono, you get this. If you turn the width up, you get a wider stereo kind of effect. And I'm actually so happy that I was able to dial that in pretty close because a used CE1, again, it's a really expensive kind of vintage effect. And it sounds so good that I was like, man, I'm going to have to find one and buy one and spend a bunch of money. And I was very relieved that I could dial that in with the AX8. So yeah, there's a kind of roundup of the blocks library that I like to use. I will put up a Dropbox link to these. So again, remember, download the blocks library, and then just to recap, you want to go to Documents, wherever that is on your operating system. Go to Fractal Audio, go to AX8 Edit, go to Blocks, and you want to import those blocks into the necessary folders, and then you'll be good to go. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Grab the presets, grab the blocks, enjoy them. Let me know how you go. If you have any problems, just write a comment and I will get back to you. And yeah, if you enjoy it, please share it around and hit subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.